Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Today I wanted to continue my series on Ernest Hemingway by tackling a small subject, Hemingway and women. So this is a subject which I approach with some trepidation, and I'm afraid that my video is going to be way too long, but I'm going to give this a shot. I want to talk about Hemingway and real women that he met in his life, women who played important roles in his life, including his 4 wives, and I want to talk about Hemingway's, I think, 3 most important female characters, Lady Brett Ashley, Catherine Barclay, and Maria from For Whom the Bell Tolls. So let's just get right into that. The first important woman in Hemingway's life, like is true with most of us, was his mother. By all accounts, Hemingway did not have fond memories of his mother. His mother was apparently a woman with an artistic bent, and from Hemingway's point of view, she was quite domineering, and she more or less emasculated his father in lots of ways, including forcing his father to do the housework and all the work around the home because his mother was too wrapped up in her artistic ideas and in the creative process. In addition to that, you can find in almost any biography that Hemingway's mother dressed him as a girl until he was too old to pass for a girl, and biographers love to make much of the fact that this might have led to some gender confusion on the part of Hemingway. I have no way of knowing if that's true. I do know that when Hemingway's father committed suicide, it's likely that Hemingway held his mother somewhat responsible. So Hemingway begins with kind of a negative relationship with his mother, a negative impression with his mother, which certainly probably colored his view of women for the rest of his life. The next important woman I want to mention from Hemingway's life is Sylvia Beech. Sylvia Beech was an American woman who moved to Paris and opened a bookstore. The bookstore she opened was called Shakespeare and Company. She got this idea to open this bookstore from her lover, a woman named Adrienne Monnier, who was a French woman who also had opened a bookstore in Paris. Beech's bookstore is called Shakespeare and Company, and in terms of the American expatriate experience, her bookstore became home to a lot of American expats. Beech and Monnier played a large role in helping to get Joyce's Ulysses published. I think by financing it and actually publishing it themselves at one point, and Beech and Hemingway became friends almost instantly. If you read Hemingway's Movable Feast, Sylvia Beech's bookstore is referred to several occasions quite fondly, and there's no doubt that Beech and Hemingway had remained good friends for the rest of their lives. Beech, by the way, stayed in Paris during the Nazi occupation during World War II. At one point, when a Nazi officer tried to come to her store and buy books, she refused. When he came back again, she refused again, and then she literally just shut her bookstore up, and she painted over the sign, and she papered over the windows so you couldn't even tell a bookstore had been there. When American women were rounded up, American women living in Paris were rounded up by the Nazis during World War II and sent to live at the Paris Zoo. Sylvia Beech went with them, and when Hemingway arrived in Paris with the with the Allied liberating forces, he went to find Beech, and they kind of renewed their friendship on a really affectionate level. So Sylvia Beech was a woman who played an important role in Hemingway's life by introducing him to important American expats, by championing his writing. Along those same lines, Gertrude Stein, the author, the avant-garde author, Gertrude Stein also played a significant role in Hemingway's life in Paris and in his writing life. She encouraged him to write. She helped revise his stories. She attempted to impart wisdom to him about writing. She hosted Hemingway and his wife Hadley, who I'll get to in a few minutes, in her Paris salon, and she and her partner, Alice B. Toklas, were friends with the Hemingways for some time. Later, Hemingway essentially attacked Stein and her reputation. I have to say, in all fairness, Stein had also launched a series of attacks against Hemingway and his reputation as a tough guy and a man, and attacked him as a writer. This was because Stein felt that Hemingway had been disrespectful to some of her friends and to some of her writer friends, most important of whom was Sherwood Anderson. But there is no doubt that Stein played a crucial role in Hemingway's budding career as a writer, by encouraging him and mentoring him a bit. So Hemingway was married 4 times. The first time he was married to a woman named Hadley Richardson. Hadley Richardson was from Missouri. She was older than Hemingway, and she really felt like she was trapped in a life not of her own choosing, in a very restrictive, kind of conservative family. And so when Hemingway came along and married her, she felt like that Hemingway had in fact rescued her from kind of a really boring life, and she kind of threw herself into the life of, the wife of Ernest Hemingway completely. And she enjoyed it. She did inherit some money, which allowed the Hemingways to move to Paris and supported the Hemingways for a little while he began his writing career. She liked to drink with Hemingway. She was devoted to Hemingway and to helping Hemingway further his career. Famously, Hadley loses a suitcase with a lot of Hemingway's manuscripts in it early in his career, and this was something that I think Hemingway probably resented enough to mention it, even though in A Movable Feast he tries to play it off as though it were not a big deal. This is something that Hadley really felt bad about. Some Hemingway biographers have suggested that Hadley lost these manuscripts intentionally to kind of derail Hemingway's career. I'm not sure exactly how true that is. Hadley is the wife that Hemingway leaves first to go off with Pauline Pfeiffer, who becomes his second wife. This was really devastating to Hadley, but in a sense she never really held anything Hemingway did against him, and she felt like that he had made her life possible for his part. If you read again A Movable Feast, Hemingway seems to have seen his time being married to Hadley as kind of a perfect point in his life, kind of an idyllic existence, and he definitely remembered her fondly. Hemingway's second wife was Pauline Pfeiffer. Pauline Pfeiffer also came from a well-to-do Missouri family. She also had money of her own. She was also able to support Hemingway in his writing in lots of ways. She was a journalism student, and I don't think there's any doubt that Pauline Pfeiffer exercised some editorial power over Hemingway's writing. I think that a lot of people believe she tried to take more credit for that than she deserved, but she definitely sublimated her own career to that of Hemingway. She was a cosmopolitan who'd spent time traveling all over the world and New York, but she had limited experience with men, and again, Hemingway was an attractive young man, and she was a slightly older woman, and she fell for Hemingway and fell in love with him, and essentially went along with whatever Hemingway wanted to do. When she was with Hemingway, according to reports, she was completely sublimated her wants and needs to his, but independent of Hemingway, she could be silly and goofy and irreverent, but she seemed to have kind of pushed all those things aside. There's some suggestion that Pauline had an abortion, perhaps at Hemingway's request, around the time that they got married and before they got married. If you read the story Hills Like White Elephants, that's kind of at the center of that story, and Hemingway left her a copy of, or presented her with a copy of Hills Like White Elephants on their honeymoon. Biographers read a lot into that. I don't think there's any doubt that Pauline Pfeiffer was good for Hemingway's writing career, and probably Hemingway enjoyed the kind of devotion she showed him, and yet Hemingway will again stray from his second wife, Pauline Pfeiffer, and begin an affair with Martha Gellhorn. Around 1940, Martha Gellhorn was younger than Hemingway. It's important to kind of note something, I think, here. By the time Hemingway meets Martha Gellhorn, he is the Ernest Hemingway we think about. He's the successful writer. He's the big game hunter. He is the international celebrity. He has already taken on a lot of those aspects of kind of the macho He-Man persona that he will, I think, trap himself into living up to for the rest of his life. And I think importantly, Martha Gellhorn is younger than he is. She was younger, she was attractive, she was accomplished. You can look at Martha Gellhorn and his attraction to Martha Gellhorn in two ways. Number one, is he attracted to powerful, independent women? Well, certainly Martha Gellhorn was that kind of woman. But does he see those women as conquest? Did he enjoy the challenge of wooing a woman of that kind and attempting to make her into an ideal wife? I don't think there's any doubt that this is Hemingway's most turbulent marriage, not for the least reason because Martha Gellhorn had no intention of sublimating herself or making her career secondary to Hemingway's. I think she famously said, "I don't want to live my life to be a footnote in the biography of someone else." That she wanted to have her own life, and certainly she does. She is a preeminent war correspondent, and she kind of helped create that job and the ideas that go along with that. Their relationship was probably rocky from the beginning. She spends a lot of time out on assignment, and Hemingway, being Hemingway, wanted his wife at home in his bed. When Gellhorn secures a contract to write about the D-Day invasion, she's angry when Hemingway worms his way into an assignment for the same thing, and their marriage breaks up, I think, sometime around 1944, partly over professional differences, and probably just because it was a marriage doomed to fail. Two very strong personalities, and with the possibility that Hemingway was not ready to tolerate a woman who saw himself as her equal, who saw her career being as important as his, and by now maybe he's in that mode where he thinks of himself as Papa Hemingway, and he expects people to kind of kowtow to his wishes. If that's true, then his fourth wife, Mary Welsh, probably fit the bill pretty well. Mary Welsh was also a journalist. They met in 1944. I believe they married in 1945. She divorced her husband to marry him. She, again, like Martha Gellhorn, was younger. Their relationship is a difficult one. I don't think there's any doubt that Mary Welsh Hemingway saw Hemingway at his worst. She's, still married to him when he commits suicide. She's married to him through the kind of breakdown in his ability as a writer, from his mental breakdown to the worst days of his alcoholism. She's there for all of that. And I think what probably must have been most nightmarish for her was just kind of the ups and downs. Hemingway could be charming. He could be affectionate. He could be giving, but he could just turn it on and off and switch back and forth from that to a cruel man who was completely selfish and self-interested. So interestingly, I think some of the Hemingway children believe that Mary exploited Hemingway to get herself into kind of high society and high circles and to enjoy wealth. Some family members never forgave her for signing the papers that resulted in Hemingway's electric shock treatment at the Mayo Clinic. I think most people conclude that the electric shock therapy Hemingway underwent was catastrophic, and it made things much worse. So sometimes she's blamed for that. I don't think there's any doubt that after Hemingway's death, she profits from the posthumous sale and publication of a number of his books. So those are the real women in Hemingway's life. I think it's interesting to note that with the exception of his mother, the first four women I mentioned, Sylvia Beech, Gertrude Stein, Hadley Richardson, and Pauline Pfeiffer, were all in a position to help Hemingway and his career. And once he had made that career, once he'd made himself Ernest Hemingway, as he liked to think of himself, I think, as this kind of macho, hard-drinking, hard-living writer, then, and when he was independent, then he turns to younger women who maybe he sees as sexual conquest, proving that he is still the man that he thought of himself as being. I think all that's possible. So I think his relationships with women in his real life are interesting.